Hello everyone and welcome back to Dreamweaver. This tutorial is going to cover how to create a traditional navigation bar. Now if we look at the code that's currently on the screen now, we can see that I've already done a few things that we covered in previous tutorials. We have a title here, which is button demo. We can see that I have a button demo.css, which is already linked. We can see that I've already created a row 1 with 2 columns, one for my logo and one that's going to presumably be for my navigation. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is begin to create the navigation in column 2. I'm going to start by creating a unique tag that is new to CSS and is part of the CSS3 and HTML5 coding, and that is a Nav Tag. So like with our div ID tags, we simply have nav. Now just like with any tag, we need to have an opening and a closing tag. Now the way that a menu works, it is essentially a list of items that are placed side by side that are clickable and linkable. So if we think of this as simply a list, this is going to help us understand how to create a traditional menu. Now there are other ways and quicker ways to create menus in Dreamweaver, but in order for us to understand those, we need to first understand how to make a traditional navigation menu. So I have my nav tag here, and so I'm going to create an unordered list. So if we look back and we think to our experiences in Word and how we create a list or a bulleted list in Word, this is very similar. So I'm going to create a UL tag here, which stands for an unordered list. And just like with every other tag, if we have an opening, we also need a closing. Now each of our items in that list is considered a list item. And so we need to have a tag for each list item. So notice this is an LI for list item. And as with every tag, it too is also closed. Now in order to speed things up, I'm going to copy and paste and simply change the verbiage. So now I essentially have 4 buttons or 4 list items. If I come to my split screen here, I click refresh, I can see that I have those 4 items. Now we need to begin to style these. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and place my cursor within the UL, or the unordered list. I'm going to create a new selector for that. Notice it says column 2 nav UL. Now if we plan to have more than one navigation for our website, we may want to keep it as column 2. An example of that is a website that has navigation on both the navigation bar as well as in the footer of the website. So in this case, I'm going to keep this at column 2 nav UL. I'm going to hit edit rule. And what I'm going to do now is I need to get rid of that text decoration. But in this case, it's actually a bullet, not an underline, overline, line, blank, or none. And that's because that bullet is not applied to the type itself, so that it's not going to be found under the category type. A lot of students fall for that. They think because the bullet is in front of the type that it has to deal with the type category. However, it's not. It indicates that it's a list. So if I select the list category, I can see that I have list style type. Now, this enables us to change that bullet to things like a disk, a circle, a square, a decimal. If we're doing an outline, we can have Roman numerals. In this case, we simply want none. We can also import our own bullets if we'd like. We also have list style position. And that's where we want that bullet to be, whether we want it to be inside, so we want it to be close to the word, or outside of the word. We're just going to leave that blank for now. If I click apply, we can see that those bullets have gone away. I'm going to click OK. And that's about all we're going to do to our Nav UL as far as styling goes. What I need to do now is I need to style these, each individual list items. Now many students will create a list item selector or rule and begin to edit that. However, these are going to be links before or after, and so what we need to do is we need to actually create a rule for links. And in order for us to do that, we first need to make these into links. So if I select the word about, and I select down here where it says HTML within our properties, we can see that there is a section here for link. Now we can type in a link. We can actually connect a link by just simply pointing to a file, or we can browse. So for instance, when it says point to file, if I open up my files here and I simply drag this target to a file, notice that it fills that in. If we look at the code, we can see that an ahref has been created, and what was targeted is now listed as what it is linking to. Now in this case, I want these to be dummy links, things that don't actually link to anything but perform like links. So in this case, I'm simply going to put in a hashtag in that link area of the ahref. And I'm going to simply type that in for the rest of these instead of targeting something and then erasing it. Alright, now we'll notice that all of these are links. Now if we look up here at my split view, we'll see that they've all turned to blue and they have an underline. This may look familiar to you. This is the same thing that happens in Microsoft Word when something is given a hyperlink. That's because this is a default. So what we need to do is we need to style how these links work. So if I come back to my CSS designer here, I select within here, I create a new selector, we'll notice that ULLIA has been created. That's unordered list, list item, and A for link. Now I can edit the rule for that link. So in this case, I can choose the type of font family used. I can choose the color. I'm going to choose text decoration none because I also don't want it to be underlined. If I hit apply, we can see here that everything has been changed. However, we have a few issues. For instance, currently the words are stacked. So to change that, if we come to box, I'm going to change the width of each link to be 25% since I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's going to take up 25% of the area of that div. And of course we need them to float left. If I hit apply, we'll see that they are now. Now we can also adjust the padding and the margin. So for right now, we'll notice that it is hugging the top of the screen. So if I give it a margin at the top, it's going to simply open up the space in the top of that. So in this case, I'm going to give it a 30 pixel margin at the top. We'll see that it's kicked that down a little bit. Now something that we haven't gone over yet, within the rule definition dialog box is the block area. So currently we can see that we have each item kind of equally spaced out here, but there's an actual division where one begins and one ends. Where it says display down here, if we put display as block, we'll actually see how it's blocked off. And also adjust the text align to center. If I hit apply, you can see now where those divisions are, and we can also see that that has become centered. Now if I click OK and I test this in my browser, so if we take a look at this now, and I scroll over the top of that area, we'll notice that my cursor has now changed, indicating that these are buttons. Now if I come back in here to Dreamweaver, another way that really helps visitors to our website know that they're about to click on a button is whenever there is a rollover or hover state for our buttons. Now there are several ways to do that, but the easiest way to do that is to simply create a rule for a hover. So what we're going to do now is exactly that. So I'm going to create a selector. We'll notice that it starts off with UL, LI, and A, but now at the end here I'm going to put a colon. Notice that when I do so, we have several options that pop up in our drop down. We have link, visited, hover, active, focus, target, laying, checked, enabled, and the list goes on and on. We simply want to add a hover state to this. Now if I select in there, we'll notice that the targeted rule says UL, LI, A, hover. If I select edit rule, I can change the background of the area and I can test this now in Safari. Notice now that as I scroll over, that background changes. Or I can simply, instead of changing the background, simply change the color of the type, which is a little bit cleaner than changing that background. Much nicer. Now because we set the area between these to be percentages, whenever we shrink this, we notice that it still works. Now in later demonstrations we'll talk about how to actually integrate a mobile menu that will change at a certain media query. But for now, you have a working navigation menu with a hover state. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this helps.